Hezbollah and some of its allies that believe that Israel will never accept diplomacy. And they're saying this is why we will never accept to give up our weapons. If Israel wants the Lebanese state to succeed, and I believe it's actually in Israel's own interest at the end of the day to actually see a sovereign, capable Lebanon at its border, it has to give the Lebanese government some cards to play. It has to show the Lebanese government and the rest of Lebanese society that negotiating in good faith can get you results, something that we have not seen so far from the Israeli side.
And just briefly, what reaction has there been in Lebanon to what we were talking about there, the Israeli soldier hitting a statue of Jesus with a sledgehammer in the south of the country?
Look, I mean, the Lebanese have been seeing Israeli violations for the last 2 years, and obviously there's the history of the occupation since 1978, including attacks on Christians. Now, the smashed Jesus statue is obviously shocking because it's symbolic, but a lot of Lebanese, particularly those who've been following what's been happening in Gaza, will say, look, this has been fitting part of a wider pattern. Christian sites have been struck in Gaza. They're also seeing Christian communities in the West Bank harassed. But obviously, this desecration of a statue is shocking, and in a way reinforces those who believe, look, Israel is not interested in any form of peace, but actually is attacking Lebanon's many communities.
Nadeem Houri, thank you very much for joining us. Let's bring you the latest on Pope Leo's trip to Africa. That's the pontiff greeted by cheering crowds in the eastern Angolan city of São Remo earlier today. Well, on Sunday, he delivered an open-air mass in Maxima in Angola before thousands who'd camped overnight to be there. The pontiff spoke in front of a huge white cross. Many watching clutched rosaries. Some sang. Others were in tears as the Pope urged people in the country to overcome divisions after decades of civil war. The setting just outside the capital, Luanda, had added resonance. A Catholic shrine on the edge of the Kwanza River, part of a 16th century Portuguese fortress, which became a hub in the slave trade. It was where enslaved Africans were baptised by Portuguese priests before they were forced more than 70 miles to the north to the port to be put on ships to the Americas. Well, joining me now is Professor Anthea Butler, historian of religion and senior fellow at the Koch Centre in Oxford University. Welcome to NewsHour, Anthea. First of all, how do you think what do you think the significance is of the Pope visiting this particular sanctuary, Mama Maxima?
I think it's very important for lots of different reasons, but let me just say two up front. One is this is a very big slight of the Atlantic slave trade. Basically, almost half of the slaves people who were enslaved went from Angola all the way out and from the river up to the coast and then were sent out to the Americas and enslaved. So this is an important piece, first of all. Second of all, I think it's important for the Catholic Church because while it's not an apology, it is an acknowledgement of the Catholic Church's, involvement in slavery. And there's been a lot of conversation about that, not just in America, but around the world. And I think for those of us who are of African descent and who are Catholic, it's an important moment for all of us to see a Pope with a mixed race heritage as he is, to have made that visit.
You say it was important that he made the visit, but he didn't directly refer to the people who were enslaved, did he?
No, he did not. But what I do think sometimes with the Catholic Church is you have to get the symbolic first before you get the admission, right? And so one of the things that has been, I would say, a contested piece of Catholic history is that, do you say that the Catholic Church instituted slavery with several papal bulls, one being Dum Diversas with Nicholas V, or do you say that the Catholic Church at times tried to stop slavery, but at the same time was implicated in it? So I think it's a complicated conversation. Maybe this wasn't the place for it, but I also think that, sometimes even in a visit, there's a lot that can be said. by not saying things up front.
You say it's a complicated conversation. It's well documented that the Catholic Church, perhaps compared with other churches, came quite late when it came to taking an abolitionist stance. Where do you think the conversation goes now with younger generations?
Well, I think the younger generation, first of all, would basically be upfront to confront the church. I mean, I teach these courses all the time, and I do talk about the Atlantic slave trade. And I don't shirk away from the fact that the Catholic Church was very involved in that. Nor do you shirk from the fact that, like what we deal with in America right now, the fact that we had Jesuits who owned slaves and other religious orders who owned slaves. So I think, a healthy look at that history, first of all, can help us to get to understanding to where we can get to the next place, which is the apologies. Because, it's hard, it's difficult sometimes in history to make these apologies for people who are in power, whether that's an American president or a pope or whatever. But I do think what is important is the education about knowing what has happened and not shirking away and shying away from that history.
So we've only got 10 seconds, but you think eventually there needs to be an apology?
I think, yes, as a Black Catholic, I would love to hear an apology. Yes, I would.
OK, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the Pope's visit. It's a 4-nation African trip. It will be wrapping up soon. That was Professor Anthea Butler from Oxford University. I'm Regina Vaidyanathan, and you're listening to the BBC NewsHour on the World Service.
Republicans are battling it out over FISA. Speaker Mike Johnson failed to get enough support from his party to pass a 5-year extension of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The Trump administration says the act is critical for intelligence briefings for the president, but lawmakers on both sides of the aisle worry it violates U.S. citizens' right to privacy. The future of FISA 702, next time on 1A.
Tune in for 1A from 10 to noon on Radio IQ.
Support for Radio IQ comes from Sweetbriar College, committed to preparing future women leaders to create a more just and sustainable world. Programs include an engineering major designed to provide hands-on experience. sbc.edu. And from EZ Performance Center and Honda. Located in Orange, Virginia, EZ Performance offers Honda power sports and power equipment. More information at ezpcva.com.
A reminder of our top story this hour. Iran's president says every rational and diplomatic path should be used to ease tensions with America, but it's still unclear if Iranian officials will attend talks with the US in Pakistan. Earlier, the International Crisis Group's Iran project director, Ali Vaez, told NewsHour that both sides need to take a step back from the brink in order to get back to the negotiating table.
President Trump does want to extend the ceasefire and get a deal with the Iranians, but in a situation that he's able to coerce them into accepting U.S. terms. From the Iranian perspective, they do not want to be seen as going to the negotiating table because they've been coerced by the United States. So the only way that the parties can get to Islamabad is if they would both remove their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
Here are some of the other headlines we're also watching. This is Regina Vaidyanathan with NewsHour, coming to you live from the BBC in London. Elections in Bulgaria this weekend saw a pro-Russian progressive, Rumen Radev, win a landslide victory. His success raises questions about the relationship between Bulgaria, the EU and NATO. Well, that victory came just days after the defeat of Hungary's far-right leader Viktor Orban, who also had strong ties with Russia. And I was there in Budapest as crowds gathered for what was seen as a momentous moment, not just in Hungary, but for Europe and its relationship with Hungary. So what do these results tell us about the role of the far-right in Europe and of Russia's relationship with European nations? Well, Ivan Krastev is a founding board member of the European Council on Foreign Relations and the interim rector of the Institute for Human Sciences in Vienna. And he's been speaking to my colleague, Owen Bennett-Jones.
The fact that Orban lost does not mean that Le Pen cannot win in France. It does not mean that AfD cannot do in Germany. There was this sense of inevitability. The idea was that the right-wing revolutions that people were seeing was almost like 1989. And after this major defeat, it was turned out that it is not true. But secondly, I do believe this is changing very much the relations between European far-right and President Trump. I had the feeling that people don't realize to the extent to which the Trumpian administration is a revolutionary government. And they had the feeling that history was on their side, and they were seeing Europe as just one electoral cycle after the United States. And from this point of view, Orban was extremely important for them. Otherwise, we are never going to understand why the Vice President of the United States, in the middle of the war, will go for 3 days in Budapest to take part in a rally, knowing very well that most of the opinion polls were showing that Orban is losing. This was a support of one revolutionary leader to another revolutionary leader. It was not support of one kind of a state leader to another state leader, because Major is not anti-American.
I was interested to read in some of your writings that you think this can be traced back to '89 when the collapse of communism happened and so on in Eastern Europe, in the sense that the young pro-European liberals who were victorious at that time were, you think, joined by nationalists in Eastern Europe who didn't really get much coverage in the West and no one really took any notice of them. But you're saying it was an alliance of liberals and nationalists that overthrew communism.
Totally. Listen, if you go back to Solidarity movement, you're going to see these two wings very clearly. There was the nationalists who wanted to get out of the Soviet zone and which were very strongly anti-Soviet and anti-Russian. And they liked Europe, but they liked Europe in the way it was in the 1950s. Very conservative, religious, nation-state centered. And then it was a much more liberal East Europeans who were much more involved with this later European Union. All of them stayed together because in the 1990s, the language of nationalism was very much because of the Yugoslav wars obtained by the ex-communists. To be a nationalist means to be the ally of Milosevic. And these people were fiercely anti-communist. So now what we are seeing basically, and we were seeing in the last 15 years, was that these allies of 1989 turn out against each other.
You are Bulgarian. Do you think that in Bulgaria there are forces who will project Orban's values into the future?
Listen, it's very important to make one distinction. It's not easy to be Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban was an exceptionally gifted politician who took a very high risk, tried to position himself at the center of European politics. Bulgarian elections, in my view, are going to end up with a very clear winner, and this is going to be the party of the former president, Rumen Radev. This party has certain sympathy towards Russia, but they're not anti-European, and they're never going to play in the European politics the role that Orban played.
So Radev isn't Orban?
Yeah, to be honest, nobody is Orban.
Right. Well, tell us more. He's an absolutely fascinating guy because in '89 he was the leading, the leading liberal student in the whole of Eastern Europe. I mean, he was a power at the age of 18, 19 or something, and he was running this youth movement for Western-style democracy. And then he got ahead of the MAGA thing. So is he just someone who sees what's happening 3 years ahead?
Yeah, listen, first of all, we're talking about an exceptionally gifted politician. And this is very important. The fact that he lost so spectacularly in the way he lost should not us forget that in 16 years before he has managed to do it. But he had a very strong sense of the direction of history. He believed it. But at the same time, something very important happened. And this was that for the younger people on the streets of Budapest, who basically defeated him, for them, he was looking in the way the communist regime was looking in his eyes in 1989. Somebody who's always in power, somebody who tries to control everything, somebody who basically became corrupt. And this is the irony of history. You remember in 1989, he was the one who said, Russians go home.
Yeah.
And now it was Major said, Russians go home. And this was the same Russians, but this time invited by Orban.
Does that mean that Eastern Europe is now ahead of Western Europe? because you've got Orban defeated. You're saying Le Pen can win AFD. Is Eastern Europe leading the West now?
Listen, I do believe that Europe is much more in the situation of this character from the children's book that I remember, who jumped on his horse and started riding in all directions at the same time.
Right. Chaos.
Listen, not chaos, but there is no this type of... In 1989, we have the illusion that we know in which direction the history goes. And now we know that it's much more about the choices of a concrete societies in the concrete circumstances. So what is happening in Hungary is not going to tell us what is going to happen in France and Germany, but what is happening in Hungary is important not only for Hungarians.
So just final thought, Orban's gone. Or, well, not gone entirely, but
Yeah.
no doubt he'll remain active. But he's had this massive defeat. Where would you expect, which country in Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, is most likely to produce the next Orban?
Listen, as I said, the story of Orban was part of his strengths come from the fact that he came before the wave. He was the wave. All those who are going to come on the same platform or ideology are not going to have the legitimacies that he had. Listen, for the right, particularly for this kind of a far right, Orban symbolically was as important as, for example, Castro was for the left in the 1970s. This was this magic place in which you basically don't know much about, but you believe that the real thing is happening there.
It's a great comparison. Castro had international reach, Orban had international reach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And listen, even the fact that we all are discussing the Hungarian elections 10 days after they're over is telling you how much he has changed the position.
Ivan Krustov there, speaking to my colleague Owen Bennett-Jones. That wraps up this edition of NewsHour.
Support for Radio IQ comes from Ironheart Winery in Allisonia, Virginia, a family farm in the Appalachian Mountains with a history dating back to 1882. Wine, lodging, and spirits available. IronheartWinery.com.
I'm Bruce C. Bryan, host of Naturally Curious. Each week, we'll meet fascinating people and hear how they got to where they are with stories that will inspire and will transport you. So tune in Sundays at 7 p.m. here on Radio IQ.
You're listening to Radio IQ on WVTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City, Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISC FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIUR Lexington, WEHC Emory, HD3 of WURV Richmond, and on 92.5 Richmond and 94.9 Fredericksburg. Radio IQ, a listener-supported community service of Virginia Tech, on your smart speaker and online at radioiq.org.
President Trump says he's sending U.S. envoys to Pakistan today for peace talks with Iran, but Iran says it's not going. Plus, the fight over FISA 702. From WAMU and NPR in Washington, this is 10a. Hi, I'm Jen White. For today's installment of our weekly politics series, If You Can Keep It, we're discussing a key surveillance tool of the U.S. government. It will expire later this month if Congress doesn't vote to extend or reform it. FISA 702 lets the government access the communications of over 300,000 foreign nationals living outside the U.S. But lawmakers from both parties worry it violates the Fourth Amendment rights of American citizens. We talk about the future of FISA 702, but first the latest on the U.S. and Israel's.
Good morning and welcome to the City Council recess session of our Roanoke City School Board trustee interviews at 10 o'clock a.m. on April 20th. City Council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and video streamed through YouTube Live at youtube.com/RoanokeVA. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. This time I'll ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
Here.
Vice Mayor McGuire? Mr. Nash?
Here.
Mr. Vollison?
Here.
Ms. Powers?
Here.
And Mayor Cobb?
Here, and a quorum is present. And at this time, I will ask Councilwoman Sanchez-Jones to please read her conflict of interest statement.
I, Vivian Sanchez-Jones, state that I have a personal interest in the meeting of Roanoke City Council that was recessed from April 6th until April 20th at 10 a.m. regarding City Council's interview of persons being considered for appointment as Roanoke City School Board trustees. Due to my employment by the School Board of the City of Roanoke, therefore, in accordance with Virginia Code Section 2.2-3112, I will refrain from participation in this matter, and I ask that the city clerk accept this statement and ask that it be made part of the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez-Jones. And Ms. Sanchez-Jones, we appreciate you being here today and appreciate you listening in. The purpose of our meeting today is for City Council to conduct 4 interviews to select 2 candidates to serve as Roanoke City School Board trustees for 3-year terms of office, each commencing July 1, 2026. We have, Vivian, I think we need you to go down and seats to be our audience today. We have 4 candidates that we'll be interviewing this morning. Our first candidate is Darlene Burcham at 10 o'clock a.m., Derek Cackness at 10:30 a.m., Christopher T. Link at 11 o'clock a.m., and Donna Littlepage at 11:30 a.m. Appointment of the 2 successful applicants will be determined at a subsequent council meeting. Each interview will be allowed approximately 30 minutes and will entail the purpose for their willingness to serve on the school board and answering questions from council. Once the interview has been completed, the applicant may leave the chamber since no official action will be taken by the council. So at this time, I'll ask our clerks to bring in our first candidate, Ms. Burcham. Welcome, Ms. Burcham. It's great to see you this morning.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview. Do
Well,
I have 3 minutes? Because that's what.
No, don't worry about that.
And I know what happened.
You don't have to worry about anything on that signal today. But we're glad that you're here. Thank you for applying and for agreeing to interview. We're going to have a series of questions, 8 all in total, that each of us will be asking you. But to begin with, we'd just like for you to take a few minutes to introduce yourself and tell us why you're interested in serving on the school board.
All right. Well, in case you haven't read the article that was many years ago about me in the magazine, I'm Darlene Burcham. I was the city manager here for 10 years, having served previously in a number of other Virginia communities. I'm a Virginian, not by birth. I was born in a hospital in Washington, D.C., but quickly moved into Virginia. So over my career, which spans almost 50 years, I have worked in cities, counties, and towns of all different sizes. At one time, I was the deputy city manager for the city of Roanoke, which at that time was the 3rd largest city in Virginia. So I've gone from that to very, very small communities. In every community, I've learned that the way to get things done is through others, whether it's through your staff or through the community. And I love working in the community. I have a passion for public service. I don't know how to do anything else. Maybe that's a limitation on my part. I doubt it. But my whole family is in public service. I have a daughter who's a city manager, in Virginia, and I have a daughter who worked in the city school system for many, many years, is now in Roanoke County. I technically retired, went right back to work 30 days later so I could preserve my Virginia retirement, and worked as an interim city manager until October of 24. And then I officially, I guess, retired. And I have to say, it has not suited me well. I'm used to working. I love working. I love being with people. I have to say that as I have followed in a limited way what's been happening as it relates not only to your budget, but to the challenges for the school system, I've been dismayed that the system has changed so much in the time that I've been gone. Because when I was here, not necessarily because of me, but because of members of the council and members of the school board, I think we had a much more collaborative arrangement. We worked together, whether it was behind the scenes or in the public. I think people believed that we cared about what I would call the Roanoke team, because Roanoke team is all of us, including the school system and the city. I think my experiences as a public servant has not only served me well, but could serve the school board well.
Ask Ms. Powers, start our questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I certainly understand about retirement. And then about 30 days later, I remember waking up one morning and I said, oh my gosh, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? So it's the first time in my adult life after college that I didn't have a job. So thank you so much for being here. So my question is, identify 2 essential objectives that you hope to accomplish as a school board trustee.
Well, first of all, I'd like to see an improved relationship between the school board and the city council. I think sometimes appointed boards forget who appointed them and become ingrained in the particular activity that they're involved with, whether that be schools or the art museum or community services board. And yet their accountability rests with you all as members of the city council. I think we ought to try to find a way to go back to some more collaborative meetings. I know, and again, it's not necessarily the solution, but I know when I was involved, we had monthly meetings of the mayor and a member of council, and we rotated those members month to month, and the same was true on the school side. The school superintendent, the chairman, and one member of the school board, and we met and spoke about what was happening. I think our staffs planned much better together. I'm not sure how much of that is happening today. If it's happening, you all aren't taking advantage of making that known to the public, because all they're seeing right now is what's being spread in the media. And I'm not sure that the city has done as good a job as it could in making that known. So I'd like for you all to, with the help of the school board, over time have a more collaborative relationship, a better understanding of each other's roles, and maybe some greater accountability on both sides. Because I don't think we see ourselves as what I would put Team Roanoke. I think we see ourselves at this point, I say our school board and the city council, as sometimes adversaries all know not wanting to be, and that's unfortunate. And secondly, I would like to see greater accountability in the expenditures of the school board and candidly the city council. Or not the city council, but the city. I mean, I think we've gotten away from some very tried and true ways to manage budgets and to determine what the costs are for a particular activity, whether it be a program or an activity, how many people it actually benefits or serves, rather than having what I call pet projects. And I have to admit, I have 2 grandsons who graduated from the governor's school and from PH and who've done very, very well. So I know that education is important. I know that it is the lifeblood of our city, but I know that we can do better. And I'd like to find a way to help do that. And I'm good at numbers. And so I think with some help from some other members of the school board, if I'm selected, we could start becoming more understanding and more involved in what's happening in the school system.
So I have the next question, and this one's a kind of long question, so I can repeat it if you need me to. What experience do you have in financial decision making and oversight in light of ongoing funding policy discussions? What do you believe the school board and council can do to promote improved collaboration on budgeting practices?
It is a long question, but I think I've got it. But if I don't, would you please just prompt me and I'll be happy to try
Yes,
to
ma'am.
address it further. I think budget discussions should be happening every month, not just at what is traditionally budget time. I think the suggestion that I made earlier about having regular meetings would be one way to make that happen. Not just from an individual budget standpoint, but what kinds of activities are going on, what plans do they have. I know, for example, there have been several buildings that have been renovated for some different uses by the school system. I'm not sure how much the city has been involved in that, but you certainly should have had a role. Capital planning doesn't seem to be as firmly twined as it should be between the two. So again, I think having regular meetings between your administrative staff and the school's administrative staff, as well as some of their other staff people, planners that could be involved, some of your public works and engineering staff. I just need to see more people working together rather than working in isolation from each other and then all of a sudden plopping a budget in front of you to deliberate. And I think that would be true on the school system side. I'm not sure how much of that is done. But again, I haven't been going to those school board meetings, so I don't want to profess to be an expert on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bertram, for being here this morning. What do you see as a major challenge in Roanoke City Public Schools? And if you are appointed as a member of the school board, what would you do to address this challenge?
Well, I think right now the major problem is what I've already addressed, and that's the disconnect between the seeming disconnect between the city and the school board. And I think that distance, and it does seem to me they are one's over here and one's over here, we've got to come together and understand that we are a part of the same system. We have different roles, but we're still one and the same. I am concerned that I hear the need for more physical resources. I'm the city manager who had the dubious distinction of building 2 high schools in 5 years. And that took a lot of creative planning to make the funds available for that. But I don't see that kind of planning happening with some of these other facilities. And I'm not so sure. I keep reading that population is declining and school enrollments are declining, and yet that doesn't seem to be the case here. And there's got to be a reason for that. And I'd like to be a part of delving into that, not just with school resources, but with city resources to really figure that out and then move forward from there.
Thank you very
Did
much.
I address it
Yep.
for you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So I have the next question. What role, if any, do you believe school board trustees have in shaping public opinion and or advocacy? And then why or why not?
That's a tough one because, as I said earlier, they are appointed by you, members of the school, the city council, and then they see their advocacy role as members of the board of trustees of the school board. And in some respects, it's a tough road. I've seen many professionals put on various boards and commissions. And for whatever reason, they seem to park at the door their professional expertise, and they go in the door as an advocate, when oftentimes their appointment was predicated on their bringing that professional help to that organization to help them be better. So I think, as I tried to say earlier, and I hate to repeat myself because then it sounds like I'm not answering your question, but I think I really am. I think we need to have more interaction between the school board members and the city council, and between the school staff and the city staff. Then I think that helps to clarify the roles. It makes it difficult. It puts a greater burden on you all because you have to have more meetings, and I don't even have enough of those. And the same thing is true of the members of the school board. But I think if we really want to have an outstanding school system in the future, we've got to take the time to do that. And they need to, as school board trustees, understand your situation and the city budget better. And likewise, the city council and the city staff need to appreciate and understand some of the challenges that the school board has, and therefore the school board trustees have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burcham. What does success look like for a student in Roanoke City Public Schools?
That he or she can be the best that they can be, academically as well as physically and mentally and emotionally. Professionally, I'm a social worker. My master's degree is in social work administration, and for beginning in my career, I worked with a lot of foster children who, it wasn't here, who the school system kind of set aside and said they can't learn or they can't be successful, and they tended to focus on the children who had it easy. And I have to say that of my 5 grandchildren, I have some of all of that. I have a grandson who's on the spectrum, who's now an engineer with a naval nuclear lab in Pittsburgh. And I have a grandson who was going to be in sports medicine, got the bug when he went to his elective at PH, and is now a cook at the Inn at Little Washington and finishing up his master's degree at the Culinary Institute of America. Those 2 young men had the opportunity, along with my other 3 in another school system, to figure out what they wanted to be and to do what they did best. And so I see success as helping each child to kind of figure out what he wants to be and do, and to help him to the extent that we can get there. But understanding that education is only one part of it. There are 2 challenges that I think have really impacted us as a society greatly. One is the loss of parent respect for teachers that have sometimes forced, I think, teachers and administrators to look the other way and to avoid some difficult situations. Unfortunately, I'm one of those that runs into that kind of situation. But I had this one foster child years ago who they had written off, and I decided for the summer we were going to get him some special help. And we did, and by the time he went back to school, he was on grade level, and he succeeded beautifully ever since. And that's just one example. And I know we have challenging children in our school system. I have a daughter who taught in this system for years. And sometimes, I'll never forget, she was hired initially at mid-year for 2nd grade, and she came back and she said, "Mom, you don't understand what 2nd graders know and understand in today's world." And I said, "I guess I don't," when she started telling me. It's a different world. And I think the loss of parental involvement is a major issue. The other is COVID and what happened after COVID. To include forcing everybody to go to Facebook or some other media as the way to learn about things. And we've got to find a way to overcome that because what's on there doesn't have to be true. It just has to be sensational. And so I see those two things as challenges that will take all of us, irrespective of your role here or the school board. It's going to take this community to be involved. And you can fix that tomorrow.
Sorry. I didn't turn over my page.
Why
What
don't you make
role,
me miss my 30 minutes, Emily?
what role and relationship should a trustee develop and maintain with city council?
Well, I think I've already answered that. I would think there needs to be some type of a regular interaction. And I don't mean monthly or maybe even quarterly, or it doesn't have to be what I was suggesting we did 15 years ago. But I think it involves reaching out, you all as council members, to members of the school board and saying, how's it going? What have you been doing? You know, what's the agenda like? Whatever you want for them to understand that you all have a connection, because I think that connection is lost right now. And I would hope that if I'm selected to be a part of the school board, I can encourage the same thing on the school board side. I may be a lone voice in the wilderness at first, but I think if you all make an overture to start meeting individually or on a quarterly basis or asking for reports or giving them reports of what you're doing finance-wise as well as in other activities, I think it could go a long way to improving the relationship.
Ms. Burcham, what are the distinctive roles and responsibilities of the school board and the superintendent?
Well, the school board is essentially the city council of the superintendent. He or she works for and at the pleasure of the Board of Trustees. And as such, the Board of Trustees should be holding the superintendent accountable and asking for information and receiving it in a timely way. I understand that currently school board members are assigned various schools to visit and interact with. And that's a time commitment. It's one I'm certainly willing to make if I'm selected. But I think sometimes a more prudent use of time like that would be spent in understanding programs. And so I would hope that maybe somehow, some way we can encourage some, not just visitation, but some better understanding of a program. What it costs, how many people benefit, what are they seeing as the results, because they should be tracking what's happening. And that would help both the school board and eventually the city council to better understand the priorities for how we spend money.
Thank you.
Ms. Bertram, please describe a situation when you experienced conflict and how did you work to resolve or transform it?
Well, I'm one of these people that doesn't pull any punches. I tell it like it is. If there's a conflict with an individual, I try to share why the conflict exists and ask what I can do to somehow remedy that situation, but also ask the other individual what they can do. I believe in second chances, so that it's not if somebody, has a disagreement with me or if doesn't do their job correctly, I try to encourage them to do the right thing and to change. But I'm not afraid uh, to take a harsher stand if I need to.
Thank you.
Well, that's all of our questions, Ms. Burcham. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Well, I think I've sounded repetitive, at least in my mind, and I apologize for that. But I also feel like that your questions have really begged for similar kinds of answers. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be interviewed. I think this is a very challenging time for the city and for the school system. I think you all know I did apply a couple years ago and didn't get interviewed, and that was fine. But I think that it's even more urgent that regardless of who you select, that you as a governing body become more involved and require your school board members to become more involved. Because I do think that we're almost at a crossroads, and I don't think we want what has happened in the media recently to be what either governing body is remembered for. I think they want to be remembered for identifying the problem and working toward a solution.
Well, tonight, as you know, we have a public hearing, and you're encouraged and welcome to invite anyone that you would like to come and speak on your behalf tonight. It's our opportunity to hear from citizens about each of the candidates. And then we will, at a future council meeting, make a determination, and we will let you know.
All right. Do you want the candidates to be here tonight? I don't plan to ask anybody to speak on my behalf.
You don't have to be here. It's totally up to you. Yeah, we've sometimes had candidates show up and sometimes not, so it's not required.
Well, I will tell you that the media had contacted me last week wanting to do an interview, and I refused. I said it was not in the best interest of anyone, and that I would be happy to speak with them once the council made their decision. But it was more appropriate that I spend my time talking with you all.
Appreciate that.
So thank you again. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Burcham.
And it's not an easy decision, I know.
It's great to see you.
Good
Thank
to
you for
see
your
you all.
time today.
And I finished right on time.
They need a quick break. Everybody good? Okay. We will prepare for our second interview, which is Mr. Derek Cackness. Our audience holding up okay?
Oh,
You want some-
you
you
didn't
want some
take your
nuts?
snacks down?
Assault. Assault with a honey roasted cashew.
Sometimes you gotta have a little chocolate, don't you?
Welcome, Mr. Cackness. It's great to see you this morning. We are grateful to you for applying to be a school board trustee. And this morning, each of us are going to take turns asking you a total of 8 questions. And feel free to take your time. We're not here to rush you. We want you to be as thorough as you can be. But to begin with, we'd like for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to apply to become a school board member. Why would you like to serve on the school board?
Sure. So my name's Derek Cackness. I am a relatively newcomer to Roanoke. I moved here about 4 years ago. I am the son of a public school teacher, the product of a public education, and the parent to a 5-year-old who is set to enroll in the public school system in the fall. So from a personal perspective, I have a pretty strong belief that participating and supporting our public education is a key part of being an active citizen and a crucial component of building a thriving community. My motivation is mostly from a personal perspective. From a professional perspective, I would really suggest sort of offering what I have as a professional skill set and experience, mainly around finance and budgeting oversight, as well as particular experience in healthcare benefits administration, again with a financial lens, as skills and viewpoints that are potentially relevant and useful to the City Council at this point in time.
Powers, we'll turn to you to get us started.
Thank you for being here. Identify 2 essential objectives that you hope to accomplish as a school board trustee.
Sure. So I'll probably break that into short term and long term. I would say short term, the primary objective would be to realign the operational budget with the current fiscal plan. And in doing so, in particular, to reestablish a better form of communication between the city council and the school board and the administration. Over the past 18 months or so, I've had the opportunity to go both to school board meetings and to city council meetings. I think, as you all know, it's been more contentious, I think, than we would hope at times. And I think that there is an opportunity at this point where sort of went through a process of having disagreements around what might have been the best path forward, but we know what the path forward is now, reestablishing that we're looking forward together. It's not a question of rehashing things or figuring out who's at fault, but realistically saying this is the plan. There's a lot more to look forward to, I think, than there is to be fearful of. And so reestablishing optimism and a collective path forward. In the long term, I think if you look at the Roanoke City Public School System, again, I think overall there's far more to be celebrated than there is to be concerned about. The educational attainment and the main, academic measures, I think this administration has done an extremely good job of closing disparities and closing gaps. If you look at particularly along sociodemographic lines around native English speakers, which is roughly 80% of the school district, they have educational on-time graduation rates around 90%, which is comparable with the county or Salem and other areas. The one area that is a very clear challenge to Roanoke, and this is true in a lot of other particularly urban school districts, is the increasing number of English language learners in the school system. Right now, that's about 20%. It's grown almost 500% in the last 20 years. The educationally on-time graduation rate for those folks is about closer to 50%. So when you look at challenges, disparities, I think in the long term, the number one strategic objective you look at is how do we align the school system? How do we align the administration in a way that supports those folks to bring that level of attainment up to what I think would be a more acceptable level in the community, but in doing so in a way that feels like we are doing it for the benefit of everyone involved, and not kind of an idea of we're taking from one pot in order to help another. And I would give sort of as a personal example, my daughter is multicultural and multilingual. Having the opportunity for her to participate in a school system where she does have activities or classes that are, discussed in Spanish or first in Arabic or first in Swahili, that's a benefit. I think that's a unique differentiator that Roanoke City has that other area schools in Salem or Roanoke County simply don't. And so if we do it right and we align the needs of the English language learning community as an enrichment to everyone and a celebration of what that diversity brings, as opposed to, hey, we're cutting the pilot program so that we can hire 40 new English language teachers, I think that's probably the biggest challenge and the objective that I would look for in the long term.
How you doing? I have the next question. And it's a long one, so if you need me to repeat any piece of it, just let me know. What experience do you have in financial decision-making and oversight in light of ongoing funding policy discussions What do you believe the school board and council can do to promote improved collaboration on budgeting practices?
Sure. So that, as I mentioned, I've been going to the school board meetings for the past 18 months or so. I'm pretty well versed in the discussions around changing the funding formula, managing the reserve account, the disagreements, I think, both between the city and the school board and how those have played out the last 24 months. When I look at what I bring from a professional perspective, folks here may be familiar with. My main job right now is as a redevelopment in the real estate world. We're part of Foundry Realty, which acquired and is redeveloping an old industrial site in the Norwich community. As part of that, my role is managing the budget, organizing between private, public, community stakeholders, and kind of keeping everyone, a $50 million project on task, on time, and within budget. So I have a lot of sort of professional, direct financial experience with regards to budget oversight and strategic budgeting within the school system specifically. And what I think the best thing that we can do, number one would be to say that the school system is challenging to communicate around funding needs because of the way that it's funded. So 65% roughly of SOQ or standard of quality expenditures are reimbursed by the state. Anything in excess of that comes out of the local budget by almost 100%. So when we look at areas that in the event of a budget downturn or that we need to have fiscal constraints, different programs and different spending levels are going to have a more direct impact. So cutting a program that 65% is reimbursed by the state or the federal government is not going to have the same impact as cutting a program that has 100% local support. So I mentioned before, I think the most relevant example of this is the pilot program, where if you've been to the school board meetings, if you heard the feedback from the community, very, very good program. Parents and teachers absolutely love it. The challenge of that is a program that is 100% funded by the local budget and local contributions. So in an environment where you do need to find local savings, that's going to be extremely vulnerable. And I think what we can do better going forward from a planning and communication perspective is to highlight those to parents, in this case, who will let extend students, but that these are going to be vulnerable programs in the event that we need to make budget cuts. And as a planning and school board perspective, to have sunset provisions so that you're not just pulling the rug out at the last minute, something like the pilot program, being able to say, look, if we see on the horizon that we're going to have to make budget cuts, it would make more sense to have a 2-year sunset provision here where we stop enrolling new folks. We have an idea of how we transition the existing folks, as opposed to kind of just hoping for the best. And then at the very last minute, when you're actually having to count, every nickel and dime, saying, hey, sorry for these second graders who have been doing this at Highland Park for 2 years, and you now need to go back to your home school, which you've potentially never been to before. And for parents, understandably feeling like that's pretty jarring and not, from a organizational perspective, very well managed. So I think it's a challenge of how do we communicate the financial realities of a pretty complex budgeting environment. I think the responsibility is to identify the areas that are most susceptible, most vulnerable, and then to plan so that you don't have to have hard conversations at the D-Day time frame where you don't have a lot of good options at that point, and folks are understandably going to feel a little bit railroaded by it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cagney. And I just wanted to clarify. You said the pilot program, but you mean the Play-Doh program?
Sure, I mean the Play-Doh program, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. What do you see as a major challenge in Roanoke City Public Schools? And if you are appointed as a member of the school board, what would you do to address this challenge?
So I mentioned previously the English language learning part. I would say from an academic perspective, that is the number one, just if you look at the statistical measures. From a fiscal perspective, the other thing that I would highlight is the cost of employee health care. So I mentioned, I am the son of a public school teacher. I would recognize that part of the social contract between the municipality, between the community, and public school teachers is that you don't get, I think, fair cash compensation for the amount of work you're asked to do, but you do get pretty generous benefits, particularly around health and retirement. In this current budget cycle, the cost to the school system for their employee-sponsored health plan increased by 10%, and that was including reducing benefits to teachers. So teachers received a 2% increase in their cash compensation. The school budget had to pay 10% to cover the health care, and most of that, a significant portion, is still going to come out of teachers' paychecks. So when they go home and do their family budgets, they're going to feel like next year they actually have less to spend than they did this year, even though the school system is kicking in 10% more than it did last year. Quite frankly, that is not sustainable in the long term. I mean, if you increase healthcare spending by 10 to 15% every year, you will ultimately bankrupt the school system and the city. And I think it does need to be said in this city in particular that the single largest recipient of those healthcare dollars is also the largest property owner in the city and also doesn't pay any taxes. And so when we have a 2-year fight over whether Roanoke City Public Schools get 40% of property tax revenue or 35% of property tax revenue, I think it's important to recognize that 40% of zero and 30% of zero are the same thing. It's zero. And you cannot possibly square this circle of increasing healthcare spending 10 to 15% a year and not either having any growth in property tax to support it or even having the opposite where this non-tax-paying entities are acquiring more taxable property and not feeding into the system. I mean, it's just pretty simple arithmetic that cannot possibly work. And I think that is probably a difficult conversation to have, but with a board and a council that I think has had probably they're full of difficult conversations over the last 24 months, I would say look forward to that one. At some point that needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
I have the next one. What role, if any, do you believe school board trustees have in shaping public opinion and/or advocacy, and then why or why not?
So I would emphasize that Roanoke City is an appointed school board. That's a relatively rare thing in the Commonwealth at this point. There is a important recognition that the school board serves at the pleasure of the city council and is a component of the overall municipality. It's not an independent, separate organ of government. In shaping public policy, I think that most, particularly parents and particularly taxpayers, recognize that it's the biggest line item in their budget, whether it's 35% or 40%, and they do feel one way or another that they have a voice in how that taxpaying revenue is being spent at the public school level. I think the school board and the administration should be very, very delicate in recognizing a chain of command and by and large communicating and understanding what is the citywide policy, how does the school district fit into the citywide agenda, and making sure that when you are communicating that to the public as a trustee, that it is not in conflict with the rest of the citywide agenda. From the administration perspective, I think just the recognition that as a trustee of the board, your job is to govern, your job is not to administer on a day-to-day. If a parent comes to you with a problem, you need to respect the chain of command and push it back down to the administration to the appropriate place. If they come to you, with an issue that is addressable at the school board, encourage them to come and make public comment, either at the school board meetings or at the city council meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Cackness. What does success look like for a student in Roanoke City Public Schools?
I think that's a great question, and I think that I would give two answers that are not direct answers. One would be that it is not the same for everyone, that different students are going to have different measures of success. And number two would be that it's about the families as much, if not more so, than the students. I think when you look at rates of success and predictors of success, I spoke to someone last week when they heard that I was interviewing for this, and they said they had done a fair amount of study previously on the Roanoke City Public School System, and their conclusion had come to that the number one predictor of student success was parental and family involvement, particularly in PTA associations. So recognizing that student success often looks like family success, it often looks like community success holistically. I think when we look at Roanoke City Public Schools and at the individual student level, it's important to support all of those definitions of success. So some students, their definition of success is going to be they want to graduate and go to a four-year college. Some of it is going to be they want to graduate and go to community college to get an associate's degree, and maybe after that, go to a four-year college. Some of them might be that they want to go and get vocational training, whether that's at a community college or through one of the CTE programs that we have already built in to the school system, recognizing that as a community, we need all of those, that those are all success, that one is not more successful than the other. I think that's kind of the important piece here of not defining success as being, well, what is our, what percentage of our students 10 years from now have graduate degrees, or what percentage have, high school or some college, or any of those criteria, recognizing that each family and each student are going to have their own definitions of success. And our job I think, as a school board and as a community, is to support all of those.
So, what role and relationship should a trustee develop and maintain with the city council?
Again, I think that there's a recognition that the school board sits between the city council and the school administration, not outside of it. And I think that there is an importance of being a representative of the mission of the objectives of city council, and being able to communicate that down to the administration, the superintendent level. I think going outside of that, or feeling like you have an independent decision-making authority, is not appropriate, and I think that it causes more harm than good. So in general, I would say that, recognizing that the school district, while the largest single component of the municipal budget, is a component of it, and that it does need to fit in with the rest of the city priorities. It is not independent of them.
Sorry, I'm writing down some things. What are the distinctive roles and responsibilities of the school board and superintendent?
So, as I mentioned before, the school board governs, the superintendent administers. So the school board is responsible for setting strategic direction, for providing strategic oversight, particularly around budgetary issues, but more broadly than that, around what are the objectives from the city council, from the community down, and both advising and holding accountable the administration for achieving and executing those. The school board trustee is not responsible for setting the curriculum. They are not responsible for managing interactions with teachers or parents. They are not responsible for the day-to-day activities. That is the purview of the administration. I would point out that I think that in sort of being involved and observing both the school system and the school board over the last 18 months, I think the administration is extremely capable. I think from a day-to-day operational perspective, they do extremely well, that there's not really any good reason, and there certainly is not any good need for people to be stepping in to do their jobs for them. I think it is to provide support, to provide oversight, and then most importantly, to provide strategic direction that is in alignment with the objectives of council and the broader city government.
Thank you.
Please describe a situation when you experienced conflict, and how did you work to resolve or transform it?
So I would say, in my professional life, I like to say that professional relationships are still interpersonal relationships. So in any instance where I've come across counsel or disagreement, I think it's important. I like to use the Walt Whitman quote that I think is probably now more directly associated with Ted Lasso, but it's, be curious, not judgmental. So reasonable people can reasonably disagree. I think if you spend your time trying to understand why someone comes to a different conclusion than you, as opposed to spending your time trying to convince them that they're wrong and you're right, that you will both be better off for it. I also think it's important to recognize that when you do find, again, conflict in professional relationships, those are still interpersonal, and regardless of what we would like to portray of, hey, put your, be a professional, put your feelings aside. The reality is that folks do, whether it's from their personal life or whether it's just from personal interactions, they are going to bring an emotional component to it, and being open to recognizing that these are not robotic interactions, that there are feelings involved. Again, trying to avoid judgment so that you're not provoking those bad feelings, but also a recognition that sometimes people have a bad week or a bad month. And even if they're highly professional and even if they're highly competent, that does sometimes bleed over into professional relationships, and being able to say, hey, you seem like this has been, you run a little bit hot this week. Is there anything going on? Is there anything that, that you can do? Doesn't mean you have to be best friends, doesn't mean you have to send birthday cards, but it does mean that you have to be open to at least recognizing that people are people and not just trustees.
Thank you, Mr. Cagnes. That's all of our questions. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
That's it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, tonight, as you probably know, we will be having a public hearing that'll begin at 7 o'clock. It's an opportunity for citizens to speak on behalf of any of the candidates, including you. You're welcome to attend tonight. You're not required to attend tonight. And you're certainly welcome to invite anyone that you'd like to come and speak on your behalf. That's what tonight is for.
Perfect.
We will be making a decision at an upcoming council meeting, and we'll keep you informed as to the next.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Take a 3-minute break. Or actually, we'll take a 6-minute break because our next interview is at 11. All right. Get up and stretch.
Carry out a plot against you. Can we do a query to try to gather some more information? And they could say yes and do it without ever going to court. But also, I think we've seen that just based on the numbers and especially with those conceptions in mind, that the burden on the FISA court wouldn't be too large. I mean, we even had one of the chief opponents of reform, Jim Himes, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, put out a proposal saying, well, I'd want a lower standard, but I'm willing to have all these queries go through the FISA court. So I think there's growing consensus that that's actually not as much of a logistical hurdle as the FBI claims.
And other reforms.
So the other major reform that we're focused on is closing what we call the data broker loophole. This is a process that intelligence agencies, along with law enforcement from the federal level all the way to local police, engage in, where instead of going through a court approval process and demanding data, all kinds of data, location data, web browsing data, purchase records, communications, metadata like who you call or text, they simply go to a data broker and buy them. And this is really circumventing what's the biggest FISA reform we've seen in the last several decades, which was back after the Snowden disclosures. We had a big debate about bulk collection. The government was collecting everyone's phone records in bulk, and at risk of doing this for other types of information with one single court order. Congress didn't like that. They passed a law called the USA Freedom Act during a FISA reauthorization that banned domestic bulk collection. But now we basically have bulk collection with a price tag attached, where the government is going to these data brokers who are compiling profiles, usually for ad purposes, and they're buying en masse thousands, tens of thousands, even millions of individuals' location data, web browsing data, metadata about who they're communicating with. That really defies the basic concept of that major FISA reform. So that's something that we want to see addressed, and a loophole we think needs to be closed.
Republicans are looking to nail down a deal during this 2-week extension of FISA 702. Do we have any idea, Jake, of what that deal might look like, really briefly?
So, it's still, there's a lot in flux. We're really hoping that there are a few reform bills out that include those 2 reforms that I mentioned, that one of those will get a vote on the floor and could be considered sort of as the avenue for addressing this issue. But right now there's a lot of ongoing conversations, but that's been our ask for a long time, and will continue to be, is let's take a vote on these key reforms.
Sharon, as someone who was responsible for oversight as part of our federal government, what are you watching as this fight continues over the future of 702.
Really watching the same things, and the opportunity to finally impose a requirement for FISA court review on those U.S. person queries would be my number one. And one other thing I would add to what Jake said about the practical ways that these provisions are being designed to address the concerns the government has asserted are one that most of these bills are being drafted so that the warrant requirement would only apply at the point of access to the query result. So what that means is the government has said in many cases they can rule out leads based on these queries. They would still be able to do that, and only when they get a hit showing there is information in the 702 database would they be required to get that warrant. So that would scale down the number required.
Well, we'll continue to watch the story as it plays out. That's Sharon Bradford Franklin, the former chair of the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board. Also with us, Jake LaPeroux. He's the deputy director at the Security and Surveillance Project at the Center for Democracy and Technology. Thanks to you both. Today's producer was Haley Blasingame. This program comes to you from WAMU, part of American University in Washington, distributed by NPR. I'm Jen White. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk more soon. This is 1A.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from your part-time controller specializing in nonprofit accounting and committed to supporting nonprofits with financial management services such as budgeting and forecasting. yptc.com/NPR. And from the Wallace Foundation, an independent nonpartisan research foundation collaborating with grantees and partners in the arts, school leadership, and youth development. More at wallacefoundation.org. This is NPR.
This is Radio IQ News Director David Seidel inviting you to discover Virginia on Demand. This free weekday podcast is a short collection of the day's news and featured stories from Radio IQ and our partners across the state. Hear the latest in politics, culture, and other highlights every morning before you get your day started. Listen to Virginia on Demand on our website, that's radioiq.org, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
The world is changing, and the global story is where the world and America meet, bringing clarity to politics and business in a time of connection and disruption. Here's what's coming up today.
It's been more than 6 months since the first phase of a ceasefire in Gaza was announced. But in the months since, President Trump, his diplomats, and the world's attention have all been diverted elsewhere with the war in Iran. What does that mean for the people of Gaza?
The global story from the BBC.
Today at 7:30.
You're listening to Radio IQ on WBTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISE FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIUR Lexington, WEHC Emory, HD3 of WURV Richmond, and on 92.5 Richmond and 94.9 Fredericksburg. Radio IQ, a listener-supported community service of Virginia Tech, on your smart speaker and online at radioiq.org.
Visa denials, frozen grants, whispers of disloyalty. The Trump administration's treatment of international college students feels familiar. From WAMU and NPR in Washington, this is 1A. Hi, I'm Jen White. Qian Shu-sun came to the U.S. from China in 1935. He earned multiple degrees from American universities. He was recruited by the Department of Defense to work on the Manhattan Project. Then, during the Red Scare in the 50s, the United States federal government accused him of holding communist sympathies, stripped him of his security clearance, and deported him. His exile isn't just history, it's a warning.
I don't need ketchup, I don't need any of that. Yeah, those first things that people put on burgers. You tell it's an onion straw. Okay, we're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Link. Come on up.
You can't put them out till they have a safe place to go.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reapplying.
Yes, sir.
to be reappointed.
Yes, sir.
To the school board. We're really glad that you're here. We're going to ask, we've got 8 questions in total that we're going to ask you, so please take your time, respond. And, but first of all, we'd love to get a refresher on who you are and why you are interested in being reappointed to the school board.
My name is Chris Link. I am a native of the Richmond area. We lived just outside of the city until I was 8, and then my parents moved to Hanover when I was in the 4th grade, which is where my dad still lives. I went to Virginia Tech. I studied engineering. My professional experience is as a structural engineer. I currently work as a project manager for a niche engineering firm that specializes in fall protection work. I moved to Roanoke in 2013 when I married my wife Elizabeth, who was also already working here in the city. We are the parents of a Roanoke City 2nd grader at Grandin Court Elementary. She just turned 8. And I am, what else do you need to know? I've started tomato plants in my basement that I hope to plant in the backyard. The spinach isn't doing that very well, but I think that's my fault. And I just spent the weekend camping with the Blue Ridge Mountain Council's all-girl Cub Scout pack in Pulaski. So I'm tired.
Yeah, there you are. Tell us a little bit about why you'd like to be reappointed.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. It's all good. After a camping trip like that.
I didn't sleep as much as I'd like to. I know that education was certainly one of the I don't know what my life would be like without it, because we only get to live life in one direction. I can't imagine what my life would be like without the transformative pursuits that I was able to undergo as part of the public school education systems that educated me as an adolescent. And I struggle to think of any better way to advance life in the city of Roanoke than making sure that a robust public education is available to all of the students here that live in the city of Roanoke.
Powers?
It's right. I'm sorry. Identify 2 essential objectives that you hope to accomplish as a school board trustee.
The first one that comes to mind is one that we've spent a lot of time talking about, and I'm answering the question truthfully. I think a stable funding source, whether the previous funding formula was at 40%, we're now at 34%. Perhaps the numbers themselves are what we're discussing and what they need to be so that it's the right fit for the city and so it's the right fit for the schools. It seems to me that the greatest asset of the previous funding formula was the predictability of it. Here on this side of Campbell Avenue, you all are certainly constantly going through predictions of what revenues are going to look like from year to year based on tax receipts and other economic activity here in the city. On the other side of Campbell Avenue, the schools certainly have to do the same thing, but they're also having to predict on 2 fronts. Not only are they predicting what revenues will be, but then also what percentage of revenues the schools should plan on or can plan on responsibly to lay out operations for an upcoming year, and endeavoring to make those predictions on 2 fronts doubly complicates the process. And so I think if city governance has determined that the 40% funding formula is not the right funding formula for the city of Roanoke, that is certainly something that is within the bounds of appropriate discussion. I would love to see And I think it's very important to see some sort of stabilized future formula that is, if it needs to be less than 40, then it needs to be less than 40, but something that can be predicted and planned upon. And then the second thing that comes to mind, and it's not a short-term solution, is seeing if we can chart out a path to address the lack of shoulder room at the high schools. Either we determine through more intensive study that the population growth dictates that that's not as much of a concern as it was looked like based on predictions from a year ago, or we determine some sort of timeline by which we can address it. I'm doing right. How are you?
I'm good. So my question is kind of a long one. So if you need me to repeat any piece of it, just let me know.
Okay.
What experience do you have in financial decision making and oversight? In light of ongoing funding policy discussions, what do you believe the school board and council can do to promote improved collaboration on budgeting practices?
Well, my financial the most immediately applicable financial oversight experience I probably have is the last year that I have spent on the fulfilling the remainder of the last term on the Roanoke City School Board. I have had the opportunity to participate in discussions both with you all and with our accounting officers at 201 Campbell Avenue, and as a part of school board meetings as we discuss various funding levels and their impacts on various categories, and how we best, as we've said in public meetings, protect the classroom. Figure out what funding levels allow us to protect the classroom, and then what remaining funds can we be spent on other things that support the classroom. Outside of that, I am a individual who endeavors to keep an eye on his own checkbook, make sure that when checks go out that funds are in the account so they don't bounce, embarrassingly. And in my work life, my professional responsibilities include project accounting, which is a little bit different. You're not you're not looking at the finances of a diverse organization like this that is kind of acting like an organism. You're managing the finances associated with a specific scope of work or a specific mission. There are mechanisms by which you can communicate with a client and discuss, well, the scope of this work has changed. I need to provide you to a change order because costs have gone up or an underlying assumption has changed. But that certainly is a little more that benefits from some boundaries a little bit more than the work that you all have to do, or they have to do across Campbell, where you're managing the finances of an organization. But I think general accounting rules apply in both situations. So that was the first part of your question. I didn't think I was going to make you repeat it, but I feel like I got to make you repeat it.
The second part is, what do you believe the school board and council can do to promote improved collaboration on budgeting practices?
Communication and compromise. Or communication and collaboration, maybe is the better word.
What's the second one?
I said communication and compromise, but I think I'd rather, if I have the chance, even though this is public, retract compromise, and I think I'd prefer to use communication and collaboration.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as a major challenge in the Roanoke City Public Schools? And if you're appointed as a member of the school, reappointed as a member of the school board, what would you do to address this challenge?
maybe I've already been on school board too long. I don't know. The greatest challenge, I think, goes back to um, establishing a predictable funding model. And I am, in order to, as a school board trustee, to address that, I am happy to do whatever I can in a communication with you or any of your fellow council members to discuss the impacts of various decisions, the various operations that the schools currently run, and how various funding decisions would affect those.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Dig the tie, by the way. Yeah.
I bought it in the gift shop at
Oh,
the
awesome. What role, if any, do you believe school board trustees have in shaping public opinion and/or advocacy, and then why or why not?
Shaping public opinion? I don't know if you can make the public believe something. I think one of the most like any of you in your professional lives, when you are speaking to your professional colleagues, you use lingo, you use terminology that is native to your industry or your chosen line of work, and it happened. One of the it not being an educator, I often feel like not a professional educator, at least in my own life. I often feel like I'm a step behind the staff at the school, who are, to an individual that I've met, all very dedicated educators. But occasionally in meetings, they will use a term that I don't know what it means, because it's a term that educators use to communicate with one another. And I think one of the assets of just being a dad is that if I can ask the question, what does that mean? And they'll quickly explain. But I think that helps provide a check on how the school's message to the public, how certain decisions are being made, whether we're certainly trying to hit a certain pedagogical target or hit a regulatory target at the state or hit a regulatory target at the federal level. All of these things come with their own vocabularies, and you can get lost in them in a hurry without first having some sort of cheat sheet as to what they all mean. Part of their work at 201 Campbell Avenue is constantly keeping a check on new targets as they come out of Richmond and as they come out of DC, and modifying what they're doing as part of Roanoke City Public Schools to make sure that we are satisfying those new legal requirements. So the school board, I think in part, sits between dedicated education professionals and the public as something of a buffer to say ahead of time, what does that mean? Well, what are you talking about? And give everyone a chance to catch up to some of the underlying assumptions of the conversation. Or even in school board meetings as well, try to ask the right questions, and try to ask for clarity so that parents who have just gotten off work, they've just picked their kids up from daycare, they are trying to get dinner prepared in an hour and a half before you need to start bedtime at 7 or 7:30, depending on the age of your children. And in the middle of all of that activity, you've heard that there's some kerfuffle between council and the school board, or the schools are starting to make a decision. And as a responsible parent, you're trying to watch it on YouTube for 30 minutes or whatever in between all that activity to try and catch up on what you heard someone talking about at the school, at the bus stop that morning. And so I think part of what the school board can do is make sure that we are asking clarifying questions and ensuring that the information is diffused or digested in a way that is more easily understood by a parent who's trying to be involved and catch a little bit of it. hope that answered your question. Okay.
What does success look like for a student in Roanoke City Public Schools?
Dr. White would tell you that that student is graduating with a diploma and a resume. Stepping back from that a minute, I think conceptually, I would want every student leaving Roanoke City Public Schools to have, and these things are impossible to know when you're 18, but maybe a bit more refined sense of who they are as a person, or who they aren't are as a person, and what they might like to do in their life, or what they may not like to do. It's a tall order to ask a 17 or an 18-year-old to pick a college major and a field of study that they may work at for the rest of their lives. It's almost an impossible task to think about when you're 18. But if you can expose those students to as many fields of study and as many walks of life and as many opportunities in modern society as we can, and either hopefully help them see something that they may like to do or something that they may not like to do, hopefully we've helped them discern a little bit about what their path is in life.
What role and relationship should a trustee develop and maintain with City Council?
I would hope to think that with any of you, assuming speaking as a trustee, that we could have a relationship of, and that's not to say that my relationships with any of you don't have these things, but I would love that our relationship be one of communication and professional professional courtesy, confidence, and trust in one another.
What are the distinctive roles and responsibilities of the school board and the superintendent?
Dr. White is a very capable professional educator. And I feel like I owe them the respect as a board of trustee to recognize that they have doctorates in education and I do not. But like lots of us, we all sometimes need an editor. And I have mostly resolved in my head, I mean, even in a formal sense, the role of a board of trustees is oversight and policy development. And then the superintendent finds the mechanisms and oils the mechanisms by which we get to those goals. And I have often found myself sitting in what feels like the role of an editor. And after a plan or a document has been produced, and just wondering, maybe this would be clearer to understand if we moved the period back, or maybe we should get rid of that comma. Just making sure that the final document is pointing us in the direction that we want to go.
Thank you.
Please describe a situation when you experienced conflict and how did you work to resolve or transform it?
Specifically within school board work or just in my life?
Just in general.
People argue a lot in construction. And not always, but more often than not, those arguments so often are not because the argument is like 75% misunderstanding and 25% something that is an actionable difference. And on more than one occasion in my professional life, I have found myself in some sort of a meeting or in some sort of a call where two people are arguing, and they're mostly arguing about something that doesn't exist, and it's because they misheard the first person and the second person did. And so often, if you can with a little levity, separate everyone from whatever tempers are flaring, and clear up misunderstandings about arguments about things that were never an issue in the first place, you can then focus on the remaining 25% that was an actual difference of opinion.
Thank you.
Well, that's all of our questions, Mr. Link. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us this morning?
I guess I should thank you for the chance to have served on the board in the last year. It has been an enriching experience, and it has put me, I've had the chance to be in rooms and at events that, while open to the public, I wasn't paying attention to them before. And being at these events, the school board gets invited to civic events. The school board gets invited to all of the athletic events. The school board gets invited to all of the events that the schools are having. And of course, all of those things are open to the public. The public is welcome wherever the camera is, are welcome to come to all of them and come support the students in Roanoke City Public Schools. Being on the school board has drawn my attention to these more so than it was before, as the dad to a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or someone who was not a native son of Roanoke. And it has been one of the most enriching things I've done in the last several years, to simply be able to walk up to these events as a member of the Roanoke community and be a part of the community and experience these things together. It's been an enriching experience. It's been wonderful for the last year. And if selected, I would look forward to doing so for another 3-year term.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for reapplying and for being here this morning. As you know, tonight we have a public hearing. You are more than welcome to attend that. You're not required to attend it. It is an opportunity for citizens to speak on behalf of any of the applicants. And that will take place this evening, and then we'll meet during a subsequent council meeting to make our decision, and we'll keep you informed of the next steps in the process.
Thank you so much, all of you, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and
You
have
all
a great
take care.
day.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes.
Prisoner exchange, and he was furious.
He told reporters at the time that he would never step foot in America again, and he never did.
The United States had exiled one of its greatest scientific minds, and he wasn't alone.
Between the years 1949 and 1956, 129 returned Chinese scientists went to work directly for, as Chen did, the Chinese Academy of Sciences.
It was almost ironic. Just as the U.S. fear of China was reaching its peak, the country handed Beijing a gift. Chen went on to become the father of China's space and missile programs. And many of the other Chinese scientists, they helped build the country's nuclear weapons, its robotics, its energy systems. Together, these are the very technologies that today challenge American power. Universities and Congress eventually pushed back, and the students came back too. America opened its doors again, and the results were staggering.
30 to 40% of the PhD students in the leading American research universities are internationals coming here for the opportunity.
And most of them stayed. 3/4 of those PhD students built their lives here, starting companies, fueling innovation. Tech firms now make up 60% of all H-1B visa sponsorships. More than half of the U.S.'s billion-dollar startups have at least one immigrant founder. For a while, it looked like America had learned its lesson. But last spring, it all came roaring back when President Trump began questioning why so many foreign students are here in the first place.
We want to know where those students come. Are they troublemakers? What countries do they come? And we're not going to...
And here's where the past really grabs the present by the collar. That voice of paranoia, it didn't just start with Trump. It started with Roy Cohn, who sharpened his teeth alongside Senator Joseph McCarthy during the Red Scare, and then, decades later, whispered in Donald Trump's ear, long before he ever went into politics.
One thing we have to understand at the outset is that the Communist Party is not a political party. It's a criminal conspiracy.
That edge, the sharp defense of fear as strategy, still cuts through. And Harvard historian William Kirby says what it bred then, it's breeding again now.
It's a moment which reinforces the sense of mutual paranoia of the 1950s, which is healthy for nobody.
The Trump administration is threatening to revoke student visas. And while the president has gone back and forth on this, the threat hangs over more than 275,000 Chinese students. And the pressure isn't just on them. Research dollars are frozen, deals are being cut. And the cost? That's harder to measure. Because America's edge in science was never a birthright. It was built, brick by brick, on openness, on funding, on trust. And now, every one of those pillars is under threat.
We're already trying to run twice as hard to keep up with China now. This is a severe body blow to the U.S. national security, let alone our economy.
For decades, the U.S. led the world in innovation. But now?
The narrative is changing from 10 years ago, China was a mass producer of cheap goods. Today, in more and more fields, China is now becoming the world's chief innovator as well as producer.
This is Cole McFall. He's a senior research analyst at Georgetown's Center for Security and Emerging Technology. He says China has been making a massive bet on science and technology, what he calls S&T, and that bet is paying off.
By any kind of S&T metric that you want to pick, China's catching.
Welcome, Ms. Littlepage. It's good to see you. Thank you for applying for the school board. We are going to ask between us collectively about 8 questions. Just take your time in answering them. If you need anything, repeat. But first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to serve on the school board.
Well, good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I applied for the school board pretty much for the same reason I ran for the House of Delegates, because I think I can help. I have a skill set that I think might be useful right now where there is some financial issues between the city and the schools, and that having someone kind of third party-ish to come in who has that skill set to kind of look at it and see how best to move forward and offer some potentially some insight is why I applied. It's I've lived in the city now for probably 17 years, and I very much appreciate the city, and I appreciate the need to balance all parts of the city in order to create a thriving community. And the schools are one part of that, and public safety is another part of that, and community culture is another part of that. And so I just thought maybe I had a skill set that could help us do some of that, and that's why I applied.
Now, tell us a little bit more about your professional background.
All right. I retired from Carillion after 35 years, mainly working in finance and healthcare administration, but I'm also the founding chief financial of the Virginia Tech Carillion School of Medicine. And in that role, it gave me the opportunity to take the concept of a school, from that to accreditation, and I learned a lot about how you accredit schools, and also then to the matriculation of the first class, and the school since then. And I was its chief financial officer until we transitioned it to become the Ninth College of Virginia Tech. So that's given me a little bit on the education side. I work closely with the dean of the medical school on her budget each year. And I also, to be honest, one of my favorite career accomplishments was that we wrote a 10-year pro forma budget for that medical school that it lived within until it transitioned into Virginia Tech. So she and I had some lovely conversations about budgets.
Okay, thank you for being here this morning, too. Identify 2 essential objectives that you hope to accomplish as a school board trustee.
One hopefully would be, and I've not attended school board meetings, to be honest. This got my attention because all of a sudden we were, I don't use the word litigating, but it felt that way, litigating the budget through the newspaper. And so that is one of the parts that I would like to be involved with. And how do we not do that? How do we work closer together in a way that it's not adversarial, in the newspaper? And so that is one thing I would like to do, um, is to be part of that, so that you kind of get equal trust on both sides. That everybody is coming at this with positive intent, right? No one's after the other, and so that is one thing I would like. I think the second one is the schools. I've read their annual report now and their strategic plan, and I think the schools are making good progress in some ways. And I think the other thing that I'd like to see us do is try and match outcomes with investments, because part of what you have to do is you can throw a lot of things at the wall, but not really know which thing got you the result you were after. And then you're afraid to get rid of any of them because you don't know. But I think kind of dig into that to see how do we sustain and continue the accomplishments that the schools have made, and potentially still do that even if you don't have quite as many dollars to do it with.
I have the next question, and this is a long one. So if you need me to repeat any part of it, just let me know. What experience do you have in financial decision making and oversight in light of ongoing funding policy discussions? What do you believe the school board and council can do to promote improved collaboration on budgeting practices?
All right, well, I'll do the first part about budgeting. Oh, I spent over 10 years being responsible for Carillion's overall budget. And at that time, it was about $1.5 billion. And so I had a lot of responsibility in negotiating what everybody would have in terms of resources, and what projects they wanted to do, and which ones we could fund, and helping prioritize which ones we did. And so I would have a lot of input and influence, and asked a lot of questions, because that is the way you understand whether something is really needed or just wanted. And you don't have resources for everything you want to do, so you have to ask those kind of questions to help prioritize. So that's my experience in budgeting, and I think I'm repeating myself a little bit for what I said a couple minutes ago in terms of building relationships so that you come out of it with trust. People knew I was going to ask probing questions, and they didn't always like them, but they trusted that I would come out of it, come from a point of integrity, that what I really wanted to do was to understand what you needed and ask you questions, recognizing that I represented everyone. And so when I said, you get something over here, that means somebody over here wasn't going to get it. And we had to do it from a position of trust, and not favoritism, not anything else, but literally what's in the best interest of the communities we serve, from a healthcare perspective, because that's what we did. So that's I think my answer. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
What do you see as a major challenge in Roanoke City Public Schools? And if you were appointed as a member of the school board, what would you do to address this challenge?
Well, I think part of the challenge is, although I heard that you all are trying to work closer together. So I think that one challenge is to bring that to fruition where city council and the school board are effective partners um, in leading the school system. And so I think that that's one challenge the school has. In looking at some of the others, I looked at the number of kids who took SATs and I thought, well, that seems a little bit lower than the percent I thought it would be. Um, and things like that, just to have a better understanding of, are people given enough opportunities for whatever they want to be in life? Whether it's go to college, whether it's vocation or whatever, and how do we um, present those opportunities? And I have a theory that they don't all have to be supplied by the schools in the city. We have a lot of partners. I'm on the board of the Roanoke Women's Foundation, and we're doing our grants assessments right now. And so we have a lot of for-profits that want to focus on children and how to help children um, grow and be resilient and those types of things. And so I'd like to think that the school system would partner with some of those as ways to not have to fund it yourself, but literally utilize some of what the community resources are. So I think the second challenge I'd like to see us address is, how do we offer all of those opportunities to children, regardless of where they come from, to give them the most opportunities as they see their life. And as you think about it, trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, giving them more opportunity to see those things that are out there that they might want to be part of. Because I think sometimes if all you have is your small world to look at, you think you can't have anything different. And that is not what we want. Um, I would think for a lot of the people who live in the city of Roanoke, that we want them to see broader than just their slice of the world today.
Thank you.
So I have the next question. What role, if any, do you believe that school board trustees have in shaping public opinion and or advocacy? Why or why not?
Well, that goes back to that whole trust relationship, because one of the things, because when it comes to reporting, sensational things tend to lead. So part of the goal would be not to create the sensational conversation. Um, and so a lot of those conversations just need to happen as part of the relationships we have. And I could be wrong in this, but I'm just going to put it right out there. A former school board member once said to me that under the old funding formula, they had not had to come to the council to ask for anything for 10 years. And what that said to me as a finance person is, that's pretty cool that you never had asked for anything. But the other thing it said, you never had to work together then, because you had everything you wanted and never really had to build that relationship. And so reinstating that relationship, so that when, kind of like what I like to believe we should do, is when we all finally speak publicly, we speak in one voice, because we've done our backroom. Here's the priority. Here's the money we have. How do we negotiate that? We've done all that. And then when things get presented, they are collectively, people feel comfortable with them. And there's not a lot of, back and forth in the newspaper, because you've had all those conversations and you've worked it out and you're doing what's in the best interest of the students. But I also believe you have to have a city that balances everything. So you've done all that work, and all parties feel comfortable at the end, that says, okay, we've come to the best outcome we collectively can come to. And now we're gonna publish that outcome. So that's what I would like to see between the school board and the council. That makes sense. Did I answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
What does success look like for a student in Roanoke City Public Schools?
Oh, and I don't know that Roanoke City. I think this is hopeful for everybody, and that is that, like I said, that they have the opportunity to see the opportunities that they will have, that they are resilient, that they have a not just what could I memorize, but they come out with deductive reasoning abilities. the things that give them the ability to be good participating citizens going forward. So we don't just teach them to memorize, but we teach them to think and make their own decisions and come to their own conclusions. And we provide guidance as they're growing, learning how to do those the best way they can. So success for me is not just you have the, you know, math, writing, reading, that you have those skills, but you do have the skills to think through and make good decisions and gather data in order to make decisions. All of that ability is what they have. And then hopefully they can use that to choose the various, whatever direction they want to take their life in, whether it's arts or accounting. I vote for accounting, or engineering, or whatever they want to be. I mean, thank God for plumbers, electricians, and HVAC workers. I mean, it's whatever they want to be, whatever makes them happy in what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, the biggest gift we can give people is to help them find a career that they will be happy doing, you know, and they will enjoy it for their entire lives. Then we have made that person more successful because they've got positive quality of life, they are making an income, and they get to go forward and do all the things that they'd like to do with their lives.
What role and relationship should a trustee develop and maintain with city council?
Did I read somewhere that you all have like board buddies? Like there was a council person and that, you know, because just using the word buddy, I mean, someone you can call and talk to and ask questions. And if you're, you know, if you think you need to understand something a little better, or understand a different perspective, you can go to your council person buddy and say, tell me your perspective. A very wise lady I worked for a lot of years told me that the most important thing for me to do was to seek first to understand before I opened my mouth. So that's what that's the relationship I'd like to have, to build that understanding, because then I as a school board trustee could also go back to other members of the school board and say, okay, here's the other perspective. And I'm well known for being devil's advocate in a lot of things. And so it's always important that we put that in front of people, that you hear the other perspective, so that you can make better overall decisions by understanding where everybody's coming from.
Me. What are the distinctive roles and responsibilities of the school board and the superintendent?
Well, but for the superintendent of the school board, there's a long list I can think of that, you know, in terms of effectively operating the school, getting the outcomes that you need, making sure the schools stay accredited. You know, I mean, there's a long list of making it effective. Um, so that's part of it. And like I said, I've read the strategic plan, which sounds really cool. I mean, if you could accomplish all those things, that would be great. But I also think um, our role is to also be a representative of the city as well as the school board, because the school board is part of the city government. So we are both. We represent the city and the school board, in my opinion. And so leaving the city and the schools better than the way you found them is, in my opinion, the role of the trustee. How do you do that? And I intentionally said the city and the school board, because I believe that it's a collective that we have to be successful. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
All right, I get the last, the last one this time. Please describe a situation when you experienced conflict and how did your work resolve or transform it?
Well, I could give a little behind the scenes example. I mean, there were lots of opportunities to take that when it came to budgeting. There's a lot of opportunities in that. But I still go back to the seek first to understand. But one of the conflict areas that went on for a year or so was as we went to merge this Virginia Tech Carolina School of Medicine into Virginia Tech. And there's a lot of differences in how an independent school runs and a state-owned agency with its own faculty senate and faculty handbook and all those kinds of things. And so I tended to get called on as the arbitrator when the two sides butted heads on a particular topic. And my job literally was to go and say, okay, what is it you're after? And what is it you're after? And how do we find a collective way in the middle that meets your needs and still meets the needs of the medical school, which was smaller than obviously Virginia Tech. And it actually became a little bit of a joke because people at Virginia Tech said, we always knew we just needed to call you and you would help us solve this. And so that is really what my experience is on this and how you solve conflict is you seek to understand what both sides need, and then you look for solutions that you can utilize to meet those. And sometimes you have to be innovative. I mean, some of the things I came up with were brand new ideas nobody had thought of, and they're like, well, I think we can do that. Okay, sometimes they said, no, we can't do that. And we go back to the drawing board. But in all of that, it's important that the people at the medical school and the people at Virginia Tech trusted me, that I didn't have a hidden agenda, that I could come to the conversation simply as a third party to say, all right, tell me what you got going on, tell me what you got going on, and I will do my best to help you guys come up with ideas that can be implemented, that still check all the boxes we have to legally, regulatorily, and financially check. And it's that trust, to be honest, is how you get stuff done.
Thank you, Ms. Littlepage. That's all of our questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us this morning?
Now, I'm gonna get you out to lunch early because that's my goal in life, is to get stuff done effectively and efficiently and concisely.
I love it.
But I do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all and potentially help serve the city.
We thank you for applying and for your time this morning. As a reminder, tonight we're hosting a public hearing that'll begin at 7. It's an opportunity for citizens to speak on behalf of any of the finalists for these positions. And you're certainly welcome to attend tonight's meeting. It's not required, but anyone that you'd like to invite to speak on your behalf, that's an option as well. All right.
Okay, well, thank you.
We will then meet at a subsequent council session to make a determination, and we'll keep you informed of the next steps.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you.
All right, you guys have a great day.
Thank you for coming.
So now that we've completed all the interviews, I'd like to suggest that we move into closed meeting to discuss the appointment of 2 trustees to serve on the Roanoke City School Board for 3-year terms, each commencing July 1st, 2026 and ending June 30th, 2029, pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 Code of Virginia as amended, and I'll need a motion and second.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Councilmembers Hagan and Volleson. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cobb?
Aye. And the motion passes. And we will now recess for closed meeting, and once we're finished with that closed meeting, we'll come back out and certify that. All right? Thank you all.